Okay, so you'll know Canary Islander Pablo Diaz Reixa. Is that
right.
near enough?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. From his debut album, Alegranza, which is jam full of steel pan loops, Tropicália, all sorts of stuff with a little bit of help from the old MPC and a Roland SP404. More of that later. So, welcome.
Thank you.
El Guincho.
Yeah.
So, you grew up on the Canary Islands, and I was thinking it might be interesting to start talking a little bit about where you come from, because whilst lots of people will know where it is and what kind of place it is, some of the people sitting here, maybe the people from Russia or Kazakhstan or China or some of the more far-flung parts of the globe, or far-flung from here, not far-flung per se, might not know very much about it. So what's life on the Canary Islands like?
Yeah. Have you ever been to the Canary Islands, or you know about it? It's like 7 small islands near Morocco, near the Sahara actually. And it's like, for example, I have family, like my grandfather, for example, they're from Cuba, and then I have family in France. Then you have roots in Africa, because like how do you say that, aborigines, like the people that were born there first.
Oh,
The natives were from Africa, so you have like a lot of weird influence there, and we also want to be Spanish and European, but you're so far away from Europe, so sometimes it doesn't make sense. So it's really interesting just being born there, and for me it was really hard to find records and get really into music in the Canary Islands, because we have just like mainstream record shops. So yeah, that's life there, I guess. Beach, a lot of beach, and a lot of sports.
Yeah, we hear a little bit of sunshine and beach in your music, I think. So how different is growing up in the Canaries than it would be growing up in mainland Spain?
Well, I don't know. I was like...
But you live here in Barcelona now,
Yeah,
right?
it's really different. The Canary Islands, it's just like very familiar, and you have the beach all the time, and I don't know. I studied in France, so for me it was like really shocking just going from the Canary Islands to France, and how, I don't know, maybe it's not the place, but the people that, you know, like the way they think. When you're in an island, you think the world ends in the sea, you know? And when you're in Europe, you can just travel and meet people from the other countries and stuff. And basically in the Canary Islands, there's a lot of people from the Canary Islands, while in Barcelona you have people from, I don't know, other parts of the world.
So when did you go to France?
I'm really bad with the ages. I think 14, octavo. Yeah, 14, I guess, yeah.
And how long did you stay there?
A year and a half.
Now we've got the dates in place. As much as kind of, you know, I think some artists who come from towns or cities with a strong musical tradition sometimes really don't want to be associated necessarily with where they come from. Some places really have a strong local musical tradition. So if you think about Berlin, for example, you can think about some musics which are very common there, which are kind of natural there. You know, in Berlin maybe it's like techno, hardcore, punk, whatever. In LA maybe it's like hip hop, funk, psychedelia. What would be the kind of like local musics at home for you in the Canaries?
There is no local music, but the like old folk like music, which is like South American music there. And as a kid there, you just want to like, you wish to be European, you know, like, so you start listening to, in my case, I was really excited by techno records first, then hip hop records, but I don't know, there's a lot of rock bands, Spanish rock bands, like really awful sounding bands. But I don't know, it's just like you wish, it's like a lot of people willing to be more than what they are. And I think what we should be doing in the Canary Islands is just look inside ourselves and you know, find the roots of our sound and work from there to find something interesting.
But if you're thinking about, you know, like you're at home, you're walking down the street, what are the musics that you're hearing? Are you hearing more European music or more African music?
Radio, FM, like kind of thing, you know, like, yeah. I was very lucky because my dad was really, really into music, and he used to travel to London to buy records, so I had a lot of like really amazing records that as a kid I never realized. So I don't know. My dad was really into funny all stars records, salsa things, and then African stuff, and yeah, a lot of Tropicália, I think Brazilian music. He was really into Caetano and all these guys. So I think that record collection from my dad that I kind of like used for my record actually like really helped me.
So you say your dad travelled to London to play records?
No, to buy records.
To buy records. Okay, so he's just like a super fan.
Yeah. He was
Okay.
really, yeah.
Yeah, these dads with good record collections can be a useful starting point for
totally.
a life in music. Okay, so we get a sense about the kind of music that's around just on an everyday level. What about because I thought it was interesting then you just said, in the Canary Islands we need to look inside ourselves and see what the roots of our music is. And that seems like what your record sounds like. What is the folk music where you come from?
It's we have like Spanish guitars actually, and a small guitar called timple, which is more like in Brazil, for example, you have like cavaquinho, or in South America you have like I don't know, charango and stuff like that. It's kind of like our charango, but yeah, well, you have like a lot of in terms of rhythm, you have the African roots are definitely there, but also you have like in terms of the harmony, you have like South American harmonies like you can find, I don't know, in like bolero and stuff like that. But also you have Spanish roots because you use Spanish guitars. So I don't know, it's kind of like a mix of that stuff, sung in Spanish.
So when we were just talking a minute ago, I was kind of using fado as like to see whether like your local music is local in the way that fado is local to Portugal, very much like a kind of a folk music with a specific tradition. And you were telling me about two different types of
kind of songs. Yeah.
Songs
because there we don't have like a specific style. You have songs. There's the Isa, and there's the Folia, and there is a Malagueña, which comes from Malaga, actually, from a place in Spain. And it's like, it used to be like 3/4 kind of thing, like slow, and the Canary Island music. For me, what is interesting is like always like a big group of people, like 20 or 30 people, just going out together and singing and just are doing all these harmonies, but very natural, like very easy for them.
And are these songs that everyone knows? Or are they songs that you kind of like...
Yeah, you can... Yeah,
is it like a competition thing where you make up songs?
You kind of like learn it naturally, It's just like, these 3 or 4 songs, everyone knows, you don't know how, It's just like part of the tradition, I guess. And
can you just... I heard what you said, but I'm not really sure about the difference between the two types of songs. What's the difference between them?
For example, the Folia is more like upbeat, while the Isa is more like slow and kind of like sad, and also like the Folia is more like a party music, and Isa is like when you come all together, and basically the difference is like the way they dance to the music too. So it's kind of like... So
all the songs have dances as well?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of like the Catalan slow, fast thing dance.
So yeah.
My apologies for not knowing what that's called, by the way.
The sardana, you've been like... Yes. Yeah, it's quite different.
So how does the dance... I'm not expecting you to do it necessarily, but how does the dance go?
They dance like that. Yeah, I don't know if you... that kind of thing. Yeah. And there's the girls in front of the guys, and they all go together like that.
That kind of dancing. So some of this stuff has found its way directly into your album, hasn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I really like stole from Los Gofiones, which is like a band that worked a lot, like trying to find all Canary Island standards and recording it. So yeah, if you want me, I can play you one song if you're into it. Yeah,
definitely. So this is a song recorded by who?
Los Gofiones.
And this is like a traditional Canary Island thing.
Yeah.
Which found its way onto your record.
Yep. Okay, that's like an Isa. It's like really sad song from the Canary Islands. And that's and now I'm going to show you how I stole it from my record. Totally. So it's that song called Cuando Maravilla Fui. So that's an Isa. Does that make sense?
That's an Isa El Guincho style.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. Okay, yeah, that's an Isa.
Thank you. one of the things that I think about when I listened to your album was that lots of the bits of it get really stuck in your head. How do you make it so sticky? Is it something to do with all the kind of like looping sounds?
Yeah, I think it's like well, that's what happens with hip hop, I guess, or techno stuff. When you take like a little piece of sound and you keep repeating and repeating, like it gets just stuck in your head. I was really into, I don't know if you're familiar with the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, or you like, Delia, Derbyshire and all that kind of stuff, like this like really old-fashioned kind of looping. I don't know if I'm gonna play you some, because I think it's really interesting. I don't know if I can find it somewhere. A ver. Yeah. You know that? You're familiar. It's like from the old BBC pioneers, like really so. And I stole that again for my record as that. So if you keep repeating that thing, it gets really stuck in your head,
Yeah, because there are quite a few samples in your record.
Yeah. There's like 20 samples in every song, so it's like crazy.
Yeah, so perhaps did that have some bearing on how long it took for the record to come out?
Yeah. Actually, we released it kind of like in an illegal way in Spain without clearing the samples. And when in Spain in Australia, actually, we sold like 10,000 records, so the record went really good. But when I signed to XL Recordings, we needed to, for an international release, we needed to clear all the samples. So that's why the release is pushed. The record is going to be out in October now, because it was so hard to clear all this stuff.
What do you look for what makes you want to sample something?
Ooh, that's a really hard question. I don't know, I really sample in a really naive way, when I really get excited by a part. Sometimes it's just, I listen to a part in a song and I think, shit, I really want that part to happen again and again in the song, because, it's not, so that's what I take it in for me,
And which kind of things, talking about the samples that you cleared on the album, what kind of things are included in that list?
The ones that we cleared, the main parts, kind of like the main loops. We clear like 2 main loops in every song, so the more like you can recognize, and the little stuff, like the little sounds, we just
the little stuff.
The little stuff.
Shh, on the little stuff. But which, maybe if you can just give us a list, maybe of a few of the things that you did clear, like where did they come from?
Yeah, for example, in the single from my album, it's called Palmitos Park. It's made of a bit of a band called Los Zafiros. Do you know Los Zafiros? It's like a doo-wop band from the 60s in Cuba. They're my favorite band ever. If you want me, I can play one of their tracks.
Let's get this list together of who's on it, and then let's have a listen to that, because they sound like a really interesting band, and an interesting band to you.
So you want me to list a lot more?
Yeah, just a couple more.
So for example, Los Zafiros, then I have Pete Rodriguez, El Conde, which is like the Boogaloo guy. Then the second song in my album, which is, I forgot, Antillas, yeah. It's like African stuff that I found on some tapes. Like you can buy you can find it in the internet actually, but you can buy in the Canary Islands. We have like a huge black market of tapes because there's a lot of guys coming there. So yeah, there's a band called Super Mazembe. I don't know if you know, it's an African orchestra. Then from the third song in my album was like the trickiest one to clear, because there was like a lot of recognizable samples, and there's like Esquivel, which is like an Exotica producer. Then like the Trinidad Steel Drum Band, which is like a steel drum.
The who?
Trinidad Steel Drum Band is like from Trinidad and Tobago. It's like kind of like steel drum kind of thing. And yeah, lots of stuff. Yeah.
I mean, you just mentioned Antillas.
Yep.
And it'd be really good to come back to Mexico and hear about the band that you're talking about. But can we just have a little blast
Antillas.
of? Please,
Yeah,
please.
sure. A lot of you guys went out last night or something, so this is not a good song to listen to if you're...
Hey, I think that's a good sound to listen to at any time, even if you're at your most hungover, because there's something very kind of happy and strongly positive about the music you make. You sound like you had, well, yes, let's have that first, but it also sounds like you had a lot of fun making it.
Yeah, actually, I'm actually not a very optimistic person, so that's kind of like weird. Yeah, but I think it sounds so, how do you say, like uplifting or something because of the, just like I use a lot of major scales. For me, when I was just taking all these samples from all the world together, worked because of the pitch. So I don't know, I just sang this stuff like really, I don't know, again in a very naive way. I just listened to this loop. As you can see, the songwriting is really, really simple. It's just like this 3 or 4 loops coming all together and working because of the pitch is coincident. So yeah, I don't know, the melodies and all that stuff sound really uplifting, but just because of the samples actually.
So what else is it that makes a piece of music sound positive? So it's major scales, it's samples.
Tempo.
What else is it? How do you make it sound so kind of Technicolor?
Yeah, that's I think because the samples come from many different places, and we sometimes when you sample you tend to forget that, but there's a sample means that there was a lot of guys playing this song in a room, so you kind of like take these rooms from all the world together, and these people kind of like coming all together in the song, so that's why it sounds so kind of like this big sounding thing, because there's a lot of people actually playing there.
Well, I like that idea a lot, the idea of kind of capturing a moment from a room full of people, lots of different rooms full of lots of different people, and throwing them all together into a new room.
Yeah, totally.
A new room called Alegranza.
And I actually what I think is kind of like interesting from the album in terms of production is like what I did with when I got all the samples. I recorded everything in the same room, and I set like 6 little amps in a room, like in a circle. So I just put this omnidirectional mic. I don't know the word in English. It's kind of like, yeah, I think it works. And I just like EQ all the different amps, so they could like, I don't know, till I was happy with the sound. And then I just placed like the drums in the middle of these amps, and I placed 6 mics behind the amps, so you could get like this sensation of like kind of like exotica stereo kind of thing. And then I sang in the middle too, so you kind of like have this room sensation.
Because you, as you just mentioned, you sung as well on.
Yeah.
On all the way through.
All the way through, yeah.
So have you always sung?
Have
you always sung, or is it just something you tried for?
Yeah. I'm not a good singer, but I love to sing. So yeah, I should not sing that much in my records, but it's something like it comes out really naturally for me. Like when I'm recording, I really want to sing over it. So that's kind of like.
I mean, it sounds by your description that you quite like trying different things in terms of the way you record stuff or the way you put it together. Are there any other things that you did when you made this album which maybe were kind of different from just sitting in front of your computer and doing it normally? Yeah,
for example, like what I did is like I had this old recorder, and I used to live in El Born, which is near the sea, near Barceloneta in Barcelona. So I used to go there and record like kind of like field recordings from the beach and the people talking. So that's why the album sounds like really messy and just like kind of like, because I use like a lot of sounds from the beach and the people walking in Barcelona. So
do you have an interest in kind of field recordings generally?
Yeah, I'm really into it. I really like whenever I go to places, I really like to record the sound from those places.
You'll have to have a chat with our friend El Santo later, who's doing exactly the same thing here with everything that's happening at the Academy.
Cool, sure.
So where else, what other kind of things do you record when you're out and about?
I don't know, because lately I'm working in a new set for the tour now that I'm starting like in 3 weeks. It's more like electronic thing. I'm really into basic channel again or whatever. I'm really like getting into that thing again. So
you mean basic channel?
Basic channel, or whatever. Yeah, I'm really like listening to my old and like a lot of old French hip hop that I'm really really into it. So I'm like really. It's more electronic now, but when I was recording this thing, I was really obsessed with mixing samples and live things again. So I played drums, and I used to play drums. I actually played drums in a band. So,
what was your band?
Coconut.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the other thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So we kind of know about. Well, we get a sense of some of the more exotic things you're influenced by, and we should definitely talk some more about that.
Sure.
But you just mentioned basic channel and French hip hop. Which are the other kind of bands or artists in the more dance-related field that you're interested in?
I don't know. Well, that's hard. The first music that I was really like excited when I lived in Canary Islands, like my friend recorded like a tape with French. I studied in the French school. That's why I was really into French hip hop and stuff, and like really techno. I don't know, Frankie Knuckles kind of thing or whatever. So that was the first thing that got me really into it in dance music. And then I was a huge fan of the Prodigy, which for me, living in the Canary Islands, like when they come and play. I don't know. I was like 15 years old. No, maybe I was 13 or something. Yeah, 13. And for me, just seeing this band like coming to where I was born was like really like I was really influenced by that moment.
So Prodigy played the Canary Islands?
Yeah, played Tenerife, yeah. Big festival kind of thing, you know. Kind of like Fat of the Land era, but I don't know, it really like shocked me.
Mm-hmm. And what are you like live? What's your set like when you play live?
I wasn't happy at all with the way that I play live, because actually I made this album not thinking about playing it live. It was more like a bedroom album, so I used to play the sampler with my left hand, but I needed something else, so I just have like a floor tom in my right hand and a piece of wood where I said like some percussions, and I had a sound module connected to it with little triggers. So I used to play like all the percussion with my right hand and the sampler with my left hand. It was kind of freaky actually, it was like that. And singing at the same time. But I wasn't happy with the sound, because I had this, for me it was the simple thing was I had this SP404, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm sorry if any of you work at Roland or something, but it's kind of like this shitty piece of equipment, like it's like a toy that never sounded good. So, but it was really easy for me to play it with my left hand live, so I don't know. I wasn't happy with the sound, so now I'm kind of like changing everything and bringing rhythm machines and synthesizers and stuff.
Yeah, because a kind of a hard record to play live.
Totally, yeah. If you're just one guy, yeah, it's really hard.
Because your artist name is named after a bird that flies alone. How important is it for you that you do all of this stuff by yourself rather than in a band?
Yeah, for me it was like kind of like I did it by myself, but it was a frustration not to find someone. Like I really like playing with human beings, not only just machines. So it was hard for me try to find someone here in Barcelona where I live that I could share these sounds, you know, and try. I actually a lot of these songs were written thinking about playing it with my band, but I was kind of like frustrated that I couldn't, you know, find like I don't know the way that I could be happy with the sound with what's sounding, you know. So I just ended up doing it by myself, like somehow.
Because it just kind of happened, didn't it? Rather than, I mean, actually, perhaps I should ask you that. Did you sit down and plan to make this record, or did it happen in a more natural fashion?
It really happened in a really like, I don't know, I never planned it, because I used to work in a studio writing like film scores and documentary scores and music for ads. So that was kind of like my soundscape or something, you know, like I just got home and started collecting all these little samples and playing with it, and you know, but really like in a really naive way. That's why I sing so bad in the album, because I wasn't like planning to do this record, you know, and like find a record label and record deal or whatever. I was just playing to relax from my other work.
So this other work, working in a studio, writing, you said film scores. Yeah. How did you end up there?
In the studio?
Yeah.
Because well, like my friend Jens have this studio in Gracia, which is a nice quarter here in Barcelona. And I wanted to record my first album as Coconut, so I went there, and he was like, well, he was the main guy at the studio, so we got to get along together really well, and we just were by the time we were really into all this free jazz stuff, kind of like, I don't know, Ornette Coleman, Archie Shepp, and Coltrane for sure, and all that stuff. So I started playing drums with him, and he played sax, and I don't know, and after that we just started to get really into each other, and I got involved with the studio somehow.
And so before that, what was it that led you into kind of being in making music in the first place? Did you grow up playing a lot of instruments?
In the Canary Islands, yeah, because I studied classical music for years because my grandma is a opera singer in the she was opera singer and music teacher. So yeah, like all the family will, all the nietos, I don't know the word in English, like all the yeah, thanks. All the grandchildren. We went to the music school as a natural thing, and so yeah, I don't know. I studied music. I started playing music like that.
It's funny because you've been talking a lot about this idea of making music in a very naive way. I did it in a very. You've used the word a few times, but at the same time as that, it sounds like you have quite an in-deep schooling in classical music and how you do things, quote unquote, properly.
But I think that's why I needed to do this thing, like really not thinking about it that much, because I tend to think a lot about things and how I want to make it and everything. So with my own music, I just want to be like as fresh as I can.
Now, I've read an interview with you where you talked about growing up in a house full of salsa, Tropicália, and African and Cuban records. Now, you kind of mentioned about how your dad was a collector and how you have kind of ancestors pretty much from all those places. But how average was this? Does every kid growing up in the Canaries have this kind of music around them?
No. Well, I don't think so. No. I was really lucky, as I said, because my dad was really into records and my uncle is really into records. So I don't know. Actually, when I grew up, like I used to hate all these records that my dad used to play at home. I was just, for example, Caetano Veloso, which is a huge inspiration for me. As a kid, I just thought it was just like kind of like fun music that my dad used to play. I was really into. Or for example, when my dad played these African orchestras in my house, I was just like sick of all the repetition and. But then it's something that I just like. I think like kind of like kept and used in my music somehow.
And what was it that maybe as you started making music yourself, what was it that attracted you particularly to Tropicália?
Because I think Tropicália, for me, which I'm really interested in pop music, maybe here, as Wolf said, you're more like there's a lot of DJs or techno artists and stuff. I was really into like pop, because I don't know, yeah, that's how I am, I guess. And Tropicália had this like really experimental kind of way of writing the songs, not the way they sound, but the way they write, like playing with structures and the way they place the sounds in the stereo and all that stuff, which kind of like helped me to get into exotica records, for example, later. So Tropicália had all this feeling, and then I felt like what they did with American music, just stealing stuff, like Caetano stole a lot of ideas, I don't know, on Milton Nascimento from the Beatles, but it was still like their own thing. So it was really inspiring for me, to do kind of like do the same thing, like you can take ideas from there and that, but it can still be your own thing.
Were you at all interested in the political context of Tropicália, sort of that music which sounds one way but actually is doing another job?
Later on I was, but I started listening to like Caetano and Gilberto and all this stuff like as 16 years old, so I wasn't that aware of the whole situation back then, in the 70s. So I don't know. Yeah, later on I read a lot and yeah.
But not at the time.
Not at the time when I was, yeah.
There were some things that you wanted to play that influenced you from that kind of area. What would you?
Oh yeah, I wanted to play like a song by a band called Los Zafiros, like a doo-wop Cuban band from the 60s. I don't know if you know them. They're really great. And then I'm gonna show you how I stole it for the record.
So you didn't let the ooh go on that one.
Totally.
Kept it going. You also were pretty into calypso as well.
Yeah, totally.
And so which was the kind of one of the biggest calypso bands for you?
Oh, wow, I love a lot of I really like the way they sound so natural. Like it's so easy for them to sing this really amazing way, like the Mighty Sparrow, I don't know, Lord Kitchener, the Techniques, more like rock steady guys like Alton Ellis too, and I don't know, Lord Invader, Lord Macbeth, all these guys like really.
So again, would this be stuff that you would hear on tape when you were growing up?
No, this stuff that I really got into it later.
Mm-hmm.
Like actually 3 years ago or something, I just started discovering all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. So maybe can we have a listen to some...
Mighty Sparrow, for
yes,
example.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I love it. And I like the way like they don't need to sing like really in tune. So for me, it's that I always sing out of tune. I kind of like felt like, really.
That's really interesting because in my own personal mental map of music and musical connections, I'd never connected that kind of minimal techno basic channel stuff back to Africa, but when you put it like that, there's a connection that makes sense.
In terms of structure, of course, not in terms of sound, but in terms of song structure, I think there's really like a connection.
And what else do you think is different about the way that those guys, those calypso guys, or maybe some of the exotica people, so I guess musicians that were operating in the 50s and before, what's different about what they did and what they had to do and the way they made music than artists tend to do now?
But I understand in which way you mean, like in...
I guess in what interests you about the difference?
For me, it was like, for example, what changed it was like you have the mono thing, and then when the stereo sound came, they're just like all these guys like Martin Denny, Esquivel, I don't know, and American guys for sure, like Russ Garcia or Sid Bass. All these guys started, like Jimmy Haskell, which I love. They started getting really into trying to place the sounds in a different way. I know they were, hey, we have left and right and center, so let's put the piano here. And why the bass has to be in the middle, for example, which now obviously in a mix you cannot put the bass in the right. Well, you can put it, but it's going to sound like that, But they were like just experimenting and trying to see, like, I can play an Esquivel track, for example, just to see how, like, what I'm explaining.
Like
Perhaps
point out what you're talking.
Music like, I don't know, Martin Denny or Esquivel is taking us lounge music, kind of like all this, relaxing, chill out stuff, which in terms of production, I think is really like avant-garde in a way. So.
I mean, personally, I really love music which appears to be simple and perhaps even like below simple, but is actually really mad and clever.
And that's where I work. Punk, for example, that's where, for example, like the Ramones. That's just so simple that it's a great idea.
Should we have a tiny bit more of this?
Yeah.
You mentioned exotica as well, and that kind of very specific 1950s way of seeing the future.
Yeah, totally.
Which of the artists in that area really spoke to you?
Oh, wow. I think in terms of, I really like a guy called Attilo Mineo. I don't know if you know him. Maybe I have some track by him here, like the way it's like some, no, sorry, no, I don't have it. Shit. Well, whatever. Yeah, or I don't know, like Jimmy Haskell, Sid Bass, all these guys, like the way they played with the stereo, that was really like hugely influenced me, like I don't know if, because I haven't read that much about them, so I don't know, it's hard to find their thoughts written and stuff. But I know it was like they were conscious of placing the things in the stereo that way, just to experiment. I know Esquivel did it because he was really like into it, but I know, for example, Jimmy Haskell, which sounds like more orchestral, you know, but it still sounds weird the way he plays, for example, all the strings and I don't know, yeah, all these guys. I don't know if they really like were aware, you know, of their, I don't know, you know, like futuristic way of thinking, or if it was just like natural for them.
Obviously, there's a whole load of artists from this particular period in time that have been massively influential on you. What about if we move a couple of decades onwards? Which other artists, particularly in terms of the way they captured their sound, have been a big influence on you?
I think like what was really influential, like what was really big in the 90s, well, maybe at home, like grunge, and you know, or punk, or that stuff, influenced me in the way that I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. You know, the way they placed like this, like kind of like batch big productions with everything here, you know, like drums and guitars and bass and the vocals, like super compressed kind of thing. I knew that wasn't what I wanted to find. I didn't know how to make the stuff sound different actually, but you know, it was like a good inspiration to try to find a different way of sounding.
So how did you work it out? How did you find out to make it sound how you wanted it to sound?
Just like, well, listening to a lot of Exotica records and playing at home with mics, you know, and trying to like do a lot of field recordings and stuff. Yeah, I think that's why.
But in terms of what you did technically, was it buying particular bits of kit, or was it just trying different things that allowed you to find your
the good
sound?
thing is, like, as I started working in that studio, I don't know that much about mics and stuff, but I had a lot of mics, so I just spent like a lot of nights when the guys went to sleep placing the mics and I don't know, trying to record guitars or drums and see how they sounded, and opening the doors and closing the doors to see how the sound just like, you know, worked in the room. And I realized, like, when you open a door, for example, or you close it, the sound changes a lot when you're recording. So that made me an idea of what I wanted. And I don't know.
So did you record with the door open or the door closed?
With drums, that depends. If you want a huge drum sound, you open the door. And
Opening the door makes the drum sound bigger.
yeah, totally. In the studio, I used to work totally. Yeah.
I mean, as we've been sitting here over the last 10, 11, 12 days, I think it is now, we've talked to a lot of people. And one of the things I find myself asking, I found myself asking pretty much everyone, is about this idea of how you listen to music and how, as a musician or an artist, you train your ear to do a certain job. How do you like to listen to music?
I'm really like a headphones guy, so I really like whenever I finish like a mix or something, I really like want to listen in the headphones. Sometimes it's not a good thing in terms of a mix actually, because you never get like distance, you know. So it's good to listen to, I don't know, get in your friend's car and play the music there, and then get in the studio, try to find some good speakers. But I'm really like a headphones guy, and just like trying to see all the details.
And so how much alteration would you make because of the listening process? Say after you finished something and you go through a process of listening to it, how much alteration would you make after that?
Alteration?
Changes.
Changes. Yeah, that's the problem that I have, that I always want to change. There's something like I think happens to all of us like musicians. Like, you always think, oh, I could have done this better. I could change. Like, I always mix my stuff like 20 or 25 times. I have like my Pro Tools is just like full of mix 17, mix 18, and then you listen to all this stuff and it's like, it's ridiculous. It's almost the same mix, you know. So.
I suppose the other useful question then, which follows on from listening, is how do you know when something's finished?
I don't know. I sometimes I play to my friends, and you know, I'm really bad at that. I don't have any perspective with my music, and for me it's really shocking that someone can be into my music. For example, today, you know, after selling records and stuff, I still like don't understand why people is listening to my music. It's hard for me to face it, you know. So. And I really need to work with a producer, or not a producer, because I really like the production part, with just an engineer or a friend that says, okay, Pablo, that's done, you know.
So is it just a deadline which makes you think that something's finished? Is something only finished because it actually now has to go to the record company?
No, also because it feels good, you know, and I always like, now I have a new law that I have to finish a track in one day, and if it's not when I record it, and if I don't finish it, then I don't use it, because if not, I really get really baroque, you know, and start adding stuff and stuff and stuff.
So does this mean that you've got the basis for a lot of other records in the future, like lots and lots of tracks you didn't manage to finish in one day?
Yeah, totally. I had a lot of bits. Yeah.
Got them in the drawer. So what's the new music you're working on?
It's like, well, for the live set, because now I'm bringing another guy with me who's going to play bass through a pad. I don't know if you know these SPDS pads by Roland. It's like a sampler, like you can play with drumsticks, and you have like all the sounds. So we had all the bass sounds recorded there, because I really like this idea of the bass being like played with drumsticks, the way it like really hits you, and we really like compress the bass so it can be like really like, I don't know, like big like sub bass and stuff, which my record actually doesn't have at all. It's all mid frequencies basically. And then I'm bringing this Juno thing, just like this typical synthesizer, and some pads connected to a module. So yeah, it's more like remixes of the songs of the album, like kind of like stripped sound, more like colder sound.
Because actually, one of the things that really struck me about your record is that whilst kind of the bands which came out of the baile funk thing, so, you know, all those CSS, Baraka, wherever, they've made it more acceptable to have international sounds, like local sounds that are not basically English or American. What am I trying to say?
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say.
But they still have this hip hop.
But they
thing,
still have. They're still kind
yeah.
of like based around a hip hop undercarriage. You know, like just big bass lines and kind of things that sound like they come from England and America, but with the rest of their own local stuff on top of it. And your record seems to have your sound, but without necessarily having to have that big, obvious European or American signature sound to it. Do you think that maybe as a kind of global listening community, we've got to a point where people don't need to have all that other stuff underneath it?
Yeah, totally. I think, and for example, that's why, and I keep telling you about Caetano Veloso, but that's why he's this big figure, because he really stole from North American music, obviously, like American standards, Gershwin, whatever. He really stole from cool jazz and stuff like that, or Milton Nascimento, for example, who really, really, really was into the Beatles. But then you listen to his records, and it's just like, you know, his own. And I actually love North American music, or it's English, like UK stuff. Like I was really into grime, for example, like, or I don't know, whatever, when Ditsy came out, like I was really excited by it, you know. But I don't know, if you just like look around you, you can find really interesting stuff without just like going so far away, you know.
But did you feel any pressure to make it sound more normal?
No, because I was telling you, I used to work in the studio where you have like this movie director that comes and want you to write this song. He specifically knows, I don't know, he a lot of music that I work for ads. They came in, hey, can you make this sound like Pascal Comelade? Or hey, can you make this sound like Tom Waits? Or hey, can you make it? So I just wanted to forget about that and just go home and try to do my thing, but without thinking about anything.
I mean, it seems like quite an exciting time, really, actually, and I'm really excited about the fact that almost it's like people's ears are changing a bit, and they're more open to different things, and that maybe, you know, over the next, however, 6 months, 3 years, whatever, you'll be hearing more people having that confidence to come as themselves.
That I've talked a lot about, like last time when I went to UK to do all this press stuff, like all the questions were like, do you think people are opening their ears? But I think people's ears have been always open. The thing is, like, now you can get to music easily. You can find music easily. So there's a lot of people now getting into different stuff, not only just the mainstream kind of like 10 or 12 artists, but people's ears have always been open, because we just live in an environment full of different sounds. You just walk in the street and there's a lot of huge different sounds, you know, so you're really like used to a lot of...
I think possibly it's just that maybe English ears weren't quite so open, because you're kind of used to pop music being propelled from England, you know, from the Beatles onwards. You're kind of, I think maybe...
That's the thing with the production. The way they, the production is like, okay, the drums have to sound like that, the guitar sound has to sound like that. That's a good pop song. So, when you have all these standards, it's hard to, kind of like go far. But people's ears, I think they're always open.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be really nice to hear a couple of other things, either new stuff you're doing or other music of yours, or maybe something else that really means something to you. What would you choose?
I don't know. Let me see. Do you know this guy called Soleil Kanté? No, it's this African guy. Well, I really like it. I'm going to play it. I don't know how to explain his music. It's kind of it's dance music, I guess. It's amazing, yeah.
I've been keeping my own little personal Dilla t-shirt count in the building, and some days it's just a couple, some days it's like 6 or 7. I think we even hit an 8 on one day. But there's definitely a lot of Dilla fans
cool.
in here.
Cool.
I mean, people like the music for lots of different reasons, but what is it that you like about Dilla?
I don't know. I think it's genius. Like the way he, like when in Slum Village and stuff, and or with his work with My Lips and stuff, he's always like, I think he's really underrated as a producer, and the way he works like he's a hip hop artist, I guess, but I think his head was in another place when he was. Also, he was really sick doing Donuts Okay, but his earlier production, I think he's always was, I don't know, like one step forward. Everyone like first time I listened to Donuts, I don't know if it happened to you, but I was like I wasn't that into it because it changed it so much. Like the songs were like 15 seconds or 1 minute, so it was all like basically like it sounded like projects of songs, but at the end you just like get so excited because it's so rich and you have like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I love it.
You don't have to explain it any further. I think we're going to have a couple more things from you and then put it out to you lots. So make sure that you're marinating on what it is you want to ask. You mentioned Arthur Russell as well when we were chatting a minute ago. And again, someone with a really definite and specific sound. You know, he didn't sound like anybody else. Totally. What's like one Arthur Russell song or record that really means something to you?
Well, I don't know. Well, Keeping Up is like this really beautiful song, but I really like his work with Indian Ocean, you know, like this remix about Walter Gibbons. I don't know if you've heard it. Mm-hmm. Well, he mixes School Bell and Treehouse, these two songs. And it's like, you really need to listen to the whole thing. It's 10 minutes, and I don't think we have the time, but I'm just gonna play like some minutes.
I mean, people find music in all sorts of different ways, but how do you tend to find music?
You mean now? Like, well, I find it through the internet most of it, and calling my dad.
Calling your dad?
Yeah, like just like, hey, like, cause because my parents are divorced, so like a lot of my recollection is at my dad's house. He lives in another island in Tenerife, so sometimes I just call him just to send me some stuff and yeah, I go record shopping, I guess, as we all do.
Mm-hmm. What's your recommendation for record shopping in Barcelona?
There was a huge, like an amazing place that closed called Discos Balada, but they closed, so I don't know. You should go to Wawa, maybe it's in Riera Alta, is in Raval. I don't know. Yeah, you should go there. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there've been a few visits down to Wawa as well
okay.
Already. What about out of town? Do you do you like have little secret spots, kind of outside of the city?
Outside Barcelona? Yeah. No, I actually, because I'm really like this year I've been touring a lot, so whenever I'm in Barcelona, I'm in Gracia all the time, the quarter that I live. I like going to restaurants and drinking coffee and being with my friends, kind of like trying to be disconnect a lot of from music. So yeah,
Okay, well, I think we'll put it out to all of you guys. Does anyone have a question right now? Aha.
Hello. Yep. You were talking about exploring space using panning. Have you thought about incorporating your music into, because I was just talking to El Santo this morning about 5.1 surround sound. Have you thought about doing a mix in surround sound and maybe incorporating it into your live performances? Because I think that would be very exciting, like to let the sound wash from back to front and things like that.
From this record, that would be really interesting. Now I'm in another, like I'm writing new stuff, so I would really want it like to be cold sound in your face thing. But yeah, with this record, it would be really interesting because it has this cinematic feeling. So it would be great.
So like if in that case, like this album, you mean you'll be releasing it in 5.1 as well?
Yeah, it would be interesting to reworking it.
Oh yeah.
Reworking it for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who else?
Hey, you've been living in Barcelona for a while.
Yep.
And how would you describe what's happening in the musical scene here?
Oh, it depends in like which musical scene actually, you know.
Well, how do you see it?
Like I see some in terms of pop music here in Barcelona. I think there's some interesting bands happening now, like some cool people. And also what I like is like, well, in my small circle of friends and bands that I know, we're all like kind of like setting up parties and nights, you know, and kind of like trying to build something, but just not thinking about the scene, you know, but just like letting stuff happen so people can listen to each other works and stuff. And I don't know, in terms of dance music, if that's where you're looking at, we have some clubs, but there's also like always people from outside of Spain coming here. So yeah, that's what is happening here.
So what, you know, if you said you're putting on parties, like what are these parties like? What's typical?
Like for example, we have some these friends from they write in a magazine and stuff here in Spain. They say this party called Our Favorite Club. It's like this kind of like secret party. There's a band playing always, and there's some DJs. But there's always like, I think in Barcelona, what you have to do is just like do your own thing, set up your own party, and you know, so if you wanted to listen to interesting sounds, you have to do it yourself. I guess in every city actually, but
yeah, I mean that's pretty
how it
much
is.
standard, isn't it? I think for
Yeah.
anyone that's, if you're really interested in music and you've got your own sound, you've got to do your own thing.
Yeah,
But I think that whole thing about doing parties is really good because lots of people who've come up with a different sound have started by realising there's nowhere really for them and their friends to hear the music they want to hear.
Yep.
So they do their own thing, and then you grow a culture, don't you? You grow a whole thing, a little universe, a house with many rooms.
Yeah, but what I think is a good moment in terms of pop music. I think in hip hop we had this huge band in Spain in the 90s called Siete Notas, Siete Colores, which kind of like, I don't know. We don't have like, I'm missing some like more maybe one step forward hip hop thinking in Spain, you know, like in terms of production, because I think we have some good MCs. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, who wants the mic? Is the microphone going anywhere else? Or is it up to me? Because I have one other question for you then before we wrap up. And that's just about getting signed, really. As an artist who's coming from a non-English speaking country, or at least from a country that doesn't have English as its first language, because obviously you speak English. How easy or difficult is it, do you think, to get a kind of international record deal when you don't come from those traditional places?
Well, it's obviously harder. Obviously harder if you live in Spain, rather if you live in, I don't know, the States or especially in London. But now you have like a lot of social networks, and you have like music networks, I don't know, MySpace, whatever, blogs. You have a lot of things that people from the record labels can get really easily stuff, you know. A&Rs are dying to find, you know, the next thing or whatever, so they're looking outside their countries to find some stuff. For me, what is weird, it's like working in London with English thinking and speaking people, you know, because I think it's really hard to match the way that I think and the way that I see things in music and the way that a big record label as XL see things, you know. But I don't know, it's also interesting to see how they work the album.
what's your you know, like with the internet, it's like there's always new things. Like once, you know, there was SendSpace and then Mega Upload and then SoundCloud and stuff like that. Is there any of those newer things that are happening that you really like?
Like I like what I don't know, like some guys like Lil Wayne, for example, before releasing like his album, he just like working a lot of mixtapes, and he was you could always find like every week like a new recording somehow, you know. And like I like what we talked about before, like the way it's really easy to find things, because I think it trains people's ears, you know, and they make them just like try to go further.
Okay, then, thank you. So unless there's anyone else who suddenly realise they have a burning desire to ask something, or perhaps you're just too shy. If so, I'm sure that you're going to be around for a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah, I really need to go to the toilet. Yeah, I'll be around.
So on that note, I think we should let you go and say, give it up, please, El Guincho. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Peace.